What we're going to go over today, obviously we're going to go over the events, but I want to go over other things to set you up for success for the next 9 weeks. Okay, so I want to go over nutrition and recovery. I want to go over a little bit of programming. Then we'll do the events. We'll have a little bit of Q&A. When we go over the events, I'm basically going to give you all of my tips on them. And then at the end, I'm going to leave you guys to give them all a try. We'll have them all set up. You give the tips a crack. I'll be here for any questions that you have around that. Does that sound all right? Awesome. Awesome. All right. So a bit of background on myself. And I've had a bit of a unique strongman experience where I started about 3.5 years ago, and I've come up really, really quick. But how I've done that is mostly because my athletic background's really big, but so is my educational background. So when it comes to things outside of training, I think that's why I have an edge on a lot of people. And then when it comes to the events, I approach it more from biomechanics than I do like how do every other strongman do it. Okay, so hopefully, regardless of your experience, you'll pick up a couple of things today that maybe I think about things a little bit differently and can pass that on to you. All right. I would love to sit. Is this too low for some of the people in the back? You all right? Good. My mom always says, the more your face is covered, the more handsome you become. All right, so let's talk nutrition and recovery quickly. So they sort of go hand in hand. There's, particularly when you're coming up to a show and you're working harder and harder, obviously your training is going to be more intense, so you're going to have to improve your recovery. And if you can't improve your recovery and you try to train harder and harder, that's when you're just going to end yourself in injury, okay? Now, important to realize, whilst a lot of people believe strength sports to be inherently dangerous, they're actually the lowest incidence of injury compared to every other sport. Okay? And largely because we're dealing with things like a log, like it's just dead weight and us. There's no extra variables. So as long as you have your training programmed properly and you have your recovery in order, it's actually really, really safe to do for quite a long time. All right? So when it comes to nutrition, there's really two areas to talk about. One are our macronutrients and one are our micronutrients. All right? Now, macronutrients, we've got fat, protein, carbs. When it comes to strongman and the energy you're using, all of our events are 75 seconds or less. Okay? Meaning that carbohydrates are going to be the number one thing that we're using for energy. Okay? Outside of the first 5 seconds. In the first 5 seconds, we're talking about creatine. Okay? And creatine, completely safe to supplement. Perfect nutrition. But that supplements in the first 5 seconds is a really easy blanket statement that every single person in strength sports should be taking 5 to 10 grams of creatine a day. Okay? That's just going to give you energy. Now, when it comes to recovering, protein is going to be able to build the substrate, okay, build the muscle, and then fats do things like keep your joints healthy. Now, for those of us who are in weight classes and thinking you need to cut down for a weight class, the worst thing you could do is take your carbohydrates really far back for a long time or for a couple of weeks and then go like, I'm just going to hammer them the night before comp, because whenever we eat food, it needs to go into our stomach, into our intestines, into the bloodstream, then into the muscles. And you don't always have those pathways super active. So if you stop eating something for a long time, then you start eating it, all you're gonna do is have a big poo on comp day, and then, well, 2 big poos. 1 big poo literally in the morning and 1 big poo when you have no energy and you're trying to compete, all right? So that's our macronutrients, and absorbing those into our system gets to our micronutrients. Now we'll keep this really, really simple. Micronutrients, we're talking vitamins and minerals. That means meat, fruits, and vegetables. Basically are the 3. If you don't eat all of those, then consider some type of multivitamin, okay? Keep that really simple. Essentially, those are helping you use your macronutrients for energy, okay? i.e., if all you do is protein shakes for half of your protein intake, that's not getting in anyway, so it's sort of a moot point, okay? Expensive protein farce is what that turns into, yeah? Okay, so let's talk programming now. So, useful for us to be able to look at all the events. So to go over the events, we've got your deadlift medley, we've got your Viking press, we've got your sandbag to wheelbarrow, tire flip. Now, tire flip, just details around that. It's flipping over a certain distance. Yeah? Number of times. Cool. Then we have sandbag throw over bar. Okay, multiple. All 5 of these events have one thing in common. Okay, and what I normally look at when I look at preparing myself or someone else for a competition is, are we looking at maximal power or are we looking at some type of muscular endurance? Well, really both, but what are we more interested in, yeah? If you can't move the weight for one, then that's going to be a problem. Let's say you're someone who's well prepared across the board. It's deadlift reps, Viking reps, sandbag to wheelbarrow is endurance, tire flip is reps, and sandbag is reps, okay? So if we're looking at, do I want to be really heavy and strong, or do I want to be more fit and greater endurance, we're definitely gonna want more of an endurance type focus for this one, okay? The benefit is when it comes to muscular endurance, now to be clear, endurance does not mean go start running on the treadmill or go for a run on the street, even though if you guys listen to me, I do talk about running. It means you need to be fit to do things for 75 seconds at a time, okay? The benefit of muscular endurance is that it doesn't take that long for you to be able to get fit in that way, all right? So let's talk generally speaking, and if this is a little bit over your head, don't worry. Everything today, the best thing you could do is basically take away one or two really good actionable items. I like to give you guys the rationale. There's no quiz at the end. Yeah, just basically get what you can. So we're 9 weeks out right now. And we're gonna go weeks on the bottom. And we're gonna go 9 here. So this is comp day. And this is going to be fitness. Do we have a different color pen? Maybe. Do we have a different color? A different color? I'm sorry. Planning's not my specialty. No, that's all right. If we don't have one, we don't have one. We'll be able to make it work. Okay, we're going to go fitness and strength. So strength is going to be a dashed line. Fitness is going to be a solid line. All right? You're going to have to follow along. Bear with me. So when we are 9 weeks out from competition, and the competition is going to be very heavily focused on endurance, what should we be primarily focusing on 9 weeks out? Strength. Bingo. Yeah? So strength is going to be high, okay? And this is really quite basic. So up until, I'm going to say, depends how fit you are. Obviously, if right now you are incredibly strong, but you can't tie your shoe or you can't, I don't know, run up a set of stairs, probably just get a bit fitter in general. But in general, on average, we're going to want strength to be high right now until about 5 weeks out, okay? 5 weeks out, and then strength is going to go down a little bit, okay? Reason being, there's a crossover effect. You can't both get maximally strong and have maximal muscular endurance unless you're really early in your training, at which stage you're going to improve everything. Now, strength, I'm going to have to change my lines. That's confusing. All right, fitness, dash line, strength, solid line, okay? So strength training, i.e. how much you dedicate your training to strength, we're gonna go over that in a sec, is gonna be really high 9 weeks out. As we get closer to comp, it goes down because our fitness work starts fairly low and comes up, okay? Now, notice, strength doesn't go to 0 and fitness doesn't go to maximal, yeah? We're just playing with those variables a little bit, all right? Now, the reason you want strength training high this number of weeks out is because say we get to something like the deadlift medley and all you did was muscular endurance work at 100 kilos and all of a sudden, and you did 30 reps of 100 kilos, all of a sudden you're trying to lift 140, I'm in Canada, 200 pounds, and then in comp you're trying to lift 275 pounds. Even if you're capable, that's so far off. 1, it's not safe, and 2, you're probably not prepared to do it, right? So, get very strong, create a big buffer, then use that strength and start working a little bit more on endurance. Does that principle make sense in general? Yeah? Okay. Does anyone want to take a picture of my Picasso? No? Okay. So when it comes to strength training, obviously everything we're doing is strength training, according to the traditional person. But what sort of rep ranges are we talking about? Anyone hit me?
3 to 5?
3 to 5, 1 to 5, yeah. So strength, we're gonna go, let's say 1 to 5 reps, and muscular endurance.
16 to 12.
Yeah, look, it really depends. So this is when you as an individual, you have to sort of know what your capacity is, all right? So when it comes to, let's say the Viking press, if you get a general feel that like my shoulders are really strong and my Viking press, I'm looking at doing 25 reps, then muscular endurance for you is now 25 reps. Yeah, you should be training 15 20s to be able to do 25 on the day. All right. Now, important to note that a lot of this stuff, we're talking at the local level. Okay. So you can train your shoulders to have high endurance while training your legs to be very, very strong. Okay. It's useful that everything in this comp is more of an endurance type focus. But in future comps, a max deadlift and an overhead for reps, you can train heavy deadlift and overhead for reps. All right. So muscular endurance, let's just call that 6 plus, which sort of just depends on who you are. Okay. So talking weeks or structuring your training for the week. I'll pause there. Does that all make sense? Are we easily tying the two together? Yeah. So if we talk about going through the week, and let's say you train, what do most people here train? 4 times a week? 3 times a week? 3 to 4? Cool. We'll do 1 for 3 and 1 to 4. 1, 4, 4. All right, so looking at these events, we've got, and when you look at how you're going to structure your training, first you have to look at movement patterns, okay? You start movement patterns, put in your big movements, and then fill in the blanks afterwards. So we have a hinge or a deadlift, we have an overhead press, we have a carry, tire flip, okay? Mostly tire flip is going to be deadlift. If you can deadlift that well, you're going to flip the tire. And you have sandbag to throw over bar, which again is a lot of posterior chain, a lot of more hinging type stuff, all right? So we've got hinging, we've got overhead pressing, and we have carry, okay? If we're only thinking about this comp, those are the 3 movement patterns. Say it's the biggest comp of the year, you want to put all your energy, those are the 3 movement patterns, okay? The other movement patterns that you want to consider are squatting. Squatting is very, very helpful. I think it's the most underdone movement in all of Strongman. Squatting and pulling, like arm over arm or a row of some sort, okay? That's from my background, both as a strongman and as a physical therapist, both of those to create as much resiliency as you can.
What are your thoughts on the separation of front squat versus back? Because I think front squat can transition to strongman a bit more, but
honestly, I think that gets into the territory of splitting hairs. So we're going to talk a lot more about splitting hairs when we get to recovery. We'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But I think if we're at the stage where we're dictating front squat or back squat, largely, if that's the thing you're worrying about, you're doing really well. And whatever you choose, you'll be right. Yeah. For reference, just practically, I find it hard to have a good front rack position. I just can't find a comfortable one. I never front squat. I program front squats for other people, but it's just sort of a preference thing. Okay, so movement patterns. We have our hinge times 2. We have a carry. We're definitely going to want to keep squats in there because of how useful they are. And we have an overhead press. Okay, now we're just going to say plus row. So those are all the things we have to consider when we look at how we're going to structure a week of training. Okay, so we just then fill in the blanks. Okay, so first we're going to start with what days are we training, what days are we not. If this is 3 days and this is 4 days, we're going to take 3 days and we're just going to write those 3 days off. Say Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. Generally important, if you can space at your training the best you can, where once you go twice in a row, that would be best. But the thing that matters the most for total weekly volume, systemic fatigue burnout, is always your total weekly volume. Yeah. If you do 3 days in a row and take 4 days off, you do the same risk of burnout as if you do a structure like this. Okay. Sorry, that's 4 days a week. You get the whole weekend off there. And maybe we go there for 4 days a week. All right. So then we're filling in the blanks. We've got 2 hinge events. Important with hinging, when you're talking strongman and when you're talking strength sports, we don't want to program the same as bodybuilding, where most of us have probably come from. Where we're not looking at muscles, we're looking at movements. And we're not trying to recover muscles, we're trying to recover nervous system, okay? Which is very different, okay? You don't need 2 days rest to recover the nervous system. You just can't have super high stimulus day after day, right? So when it comes to hinging, you could do good mornings 3 times a week if you wanted, but you couldn't deadlift 3 times a week because it's too heavy. Essentially, just take how much weight am I moving, and the heavier it is gross weight, the less you can do it. Yoke is usually a once a week, deadlift is usually once a week, squats are probably twice a week, and overhead press, you could literally do 3 to 4 times a week and probably be okay, all right? So we'll get 1 hinge day in there for 3 days and 4 days. Then our overhead press. Then we have our squats. And really, if you're talking 3 days a week, that gets everything you need. Now, useful since we're training nervous system to do things more than once a week, okay? So I would do a hinge on a Monday. I would also put some on a Friday with your squats, okay? I would go overhead press at least 2 days, probably 3, okay? Now, this is very brief overview. Does anyone have questions in general about this? No? Biggest takeaway with your programming is that you need to know what you're doing. You need to know what you did last week, and you need to, in some way, progress that from this week to next week, okay? In general, progressing 2 to 5% every week is what you're looking to do, and you need to start with some type of base of effort, okay? You never want to look at the comp weights and go, okay, I need to progress 5% every week to hit that comp weight, ergo, 5% back, 5% back, 5% back, and then go like, okay, so today I'm starting with a new PB, and that way we're gonna hit comp weight, right? So always start. So say we're 9 weeks out, you start with your higher intensity strength training. You start at an effort of 7, you progress at 5%, say for 4 weeks time, then you take a deload, you let your body recover, go literally 50% of the weights for a week, then you go into a high volume training for 3 to 4 weeks to build that into comp. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, does anyone have questions around that? Yeah.
If you were first starting Strongman, would you focus more on frequency of like certain things or intensity?
I focus on frequency at any level, really. Yeah, so certainly when you're trying to learn a movement, frequency is disproportionately important. But in the end, like if I was on a fixed plane force transducer, like say a shoulder press, and there was no technique, yeah, how much could I really increase my strength? Like me personally, from now into when I'm at my peak strength, we're talking like maybe I could squeeze out another 5%, okay? But if you improve your technique, I can improve 10% like today, if you just learn how to groove something properly. And there's a practice element to it. So that's why, let's say you're a novice and you're on the monster dumbbell, you can do the monster dumbbell 3 times in a week. Now, it's important when you're repeating things in a week, you can't just go like monster dumbbell max, and monster dumbbell max. Yeah, you got to vary that up a little bit, or else the same stimulus just gets a bit stale, right? So say that was the case, monster dumbbell max, monster dumbbell power at 60%, and then maybe monster dumbbell volume at 60%, but now 8 reps in a row or something like that. Yeah? Okay. All right, so let's go recovery. Here's a test for who's watched my stuff before. There's 3 pillars of recovery that I always talk about. Who's got them? Yeah.
Sleep,
Yep.
nutrition, and stress.
Yeah. Well done. Brownie points. I'm gonna get you have 1 moose star. You and so does I'm trying to remember your name. Amanda. Yeah, for saying that this is the best moments. So sleep, nutrition, and stress. A lot of this has to do with, we've talked about nutrition, okay? Let's just ignore that one. But sleep and stress. Like I said, Strongman is nervous system. Strongman is not the muscular system for the most part, right? When it comes to this, we have 2 nervous systems. We have the parasympathetic and we have the sympathetic nervous system. When you're doing things that are fight or flight, say you're training, you're presenting in front of a group, you're anything like that, we're talking sympathetic nervous system. If you use that system too much, then it has a hard time shutting off. And that can't be on at the same time as your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, right? So if you're working too hard in the gym, you're overtraining, your life is stressful, you're arguing with your partner, whatever it is, then you never have a period in which you can recover. Okay? Meaning that it's just going to get stale. Nervous system fatigue, we've all felt it. If you've done a set of say 5, and it's a new 5 rep max, and say it's deadlifts, and say it's 400 pounds. 400 pounds for a set of 5, that's your max. You drop that down to 300 pounds for your next set, and you're like, still can't do it. Like, I'm cooked. It's enough. So people early in their training probably haven't felt that yet, but it's very real. Very, very real. It's basically like your brain just shuts off. It gives up, all right? So when you're training, this is why we have to go through what's called periodization, or sometimes like going to a period where you're working harder and then deload. Because when you're in that period of working harder, or you're leading up to a comp, things are going to start to happen, and you're going to identify that your sympathetic system is on overload. meaning that sleep might be a little bit more difficult. Everyone around you seems to think you're more grouchy, even though you insist that you're not. Your appetite might change. All of those types of things indicate that, okay, maybe it's time to step the training back a touch. All right? Okay, now stress, life stress. Unfortunately, most of us have no control at all over our life stress. You don't know who's going to get mad or if you're going to lose your job or whatever it is. So it leaves us with sleep as the best thing that we can control. And when it comes to this, really basic, okay? Like, don't go to bed with your phone at night. Go to bed at the same time every night, wake up at the same time every day. Make sure your room is dark, make sure your room is cold. If you're doing those 5 things, you're in a pretty good spot to be able to sleep well. Okay? Does that all make sense? Cool. I'm keen to get into a little bit of our events now. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A after. If you have individual questions, feel free. Let's take 5 minutes and just move the chairs out the way. I'm going to grab another coffee. Anyone who also grabs a coffee is getting bonus points, moose points. And then we're going to get into the events.